Las Vegas did not build itself. Between 1946 and the mid-1980s, real operational control of its casino floors passed through the hands of organized crime figures, men documented in federal court records, congressional hearings, and FBI files released decades later under the Freedom of Information Act. 7 men, in particular, held genuine operational control of a major Las Vegas property, or of the money moving through it. Every one of them lost that control. Some lost it to bullets. One lost it to a car bomb he survived, and to a state regulator he could not outlast. One lost it to a Senate subpoena and a killer he let into his own kitchen. This is the documented record of 7 men who controlled pieces of Las Vegas, and of exactly how each one lost it, drawn entirely from federal court records, congressional testimony, and FBI files. Not from the films that made these names familiar. Number 7 built a resort empire and was bought out by a billionaire. Number 1 ran the entire network from 1,000 miles away, and it cost him everything 4 days before he could tell Washington what he knew. The mob's hold on Las Vegas did not happen by accident. Nevada legalized gambling in 1931, but it was the post-war building boom of the late 1940s that turned a desert rail stop into a resort corridor. Conventional banks would not lend against casino construction, so organized crime money, laundered through Cleveland, Chicago, and New York Syndicate channels, and later supplemented by loans from the Teamsters Union's Central States Pension Fund, financed most of the early hotel casinos built along the Strip. The Central States Pension Fund's fingerprints, documented in later federal investigations, reach as far as Caesar's Palace in 1966 and Circus Circus in 1968, properties built years after the men on this list first arrived. The 1950 and 1951 hearings of the Senate's Special Committee to investigate organized crime in interstate commerce, chaired by Senator Estes Kefauver, put that financing on the public record for the first time, naming syndicate figures and their Nevada holdings under oath. What followed was 3 decades documented in federal indictments, FBI surveillance files, and eventually, the FBI's undercover skimming investigations of the late 1970s and 1980s, which finally dismantled what remained of direct mob control of Las Vegas casinos. The 7 men on this list span 3 eras of that arc: the builders of the late 1940s and 1950s, the Chicago outfits operators of the 1960s and 1970s, and the man who directed the entire network from Chicago until a Senate committee caught up with him. Every name, date, and cause of death in this account is drawn from at least 2 of the sources named across this episode: federal court records, congressional testimony, FBI files, and the published work of organized crime historians, including Sally Denton, Roger Morris, and Nicholas Pileggi. Number 7. Morris Moe Dalitz. Dalitz built his early fortune running Prohibition-era liquor out of Cleveland, alongside partners Morris Kleinman, Sam Tucker, and Louis Rothkopf, in what federal investigators later called the Cleveland Syndicate. When Nevada's legal gambling market opened the door to investment that looked legitimate on paper, Dalitz and his Cleveland partners moved their capital into Las Vegas, financing the Desert Inn, which opened in 1950, and later taking controlling interests in the Stardust and the Fremont. According to Sally Denton and Roger Morris's History of Las Vegas, The Money and the Power, Dalitz spent 2 decades as the single most influential businessman on the Strip, sitting on hospital boards and civic committees in public, while federal investigators continued to document his syndicate ties in private. The 1951 Kefauver Committee report named Dalitz directly in its findings on Nevada gambling financing. Dalitz was never convicted of a Nevada gaming crime, and by the mid-1950s, he had positioned himself as a civic benefactor as well as a casino owner, helping fund the construction of Sunrise Hospital in 1958, one of the city's first major medical centers, a philanthropic record that contemporaries cited even as federal files continued to track his syndicate history. His loss of control came from pressure, not prosecution. In 1966 and 1967, billionaire Howard Hughes arrived in Las Vegas and began buying casinos outright, in part, according to federal officials quoted at the time, to help push organized crime ownership out of Nevada gaming and clear the way for legitimate corporate investment. Hughes purchased the Desert Inn from Dalitz's group in 1967, in a sale historians place at roughly $13 million. It was a legal transaction, not a seizure, but it ended Dalitz's operational control of the property that had made him the Strip's most powerful man. Dalitz spent his remaining 2 decades as a Las Vegas civic figure and philanthropist, never facing a Nevada gaming conviction. He died in Las Vegas in 1989, at the age of 89, of natural causes. He is the only man on this list who lost his hold on Las Vegas to a purchase offer instead of to violence, prison, or federal exclusion. Number 6. Gus Greenbaum. Greenbaum ran gambling wire services for the Chicago and Arizona syndicates through the 1930s and 1940s, before he was sent to Las Vegas in 1947 to take over management of the Flamingo, following the killing of the hotel's original driving force, Benjamin Siegel. According to multiple historian accounts, Greenbaum had by then already retired to Phoenix for his health and initially declined the assignment. The outfit's leadership made clear the request was not optional, and Greenbaum returned to work within days. Under Greenbaum, the Flamingo turned its first real profit within a year, according to Denton and Morris, and by the early 1950s, Greenbaum had also taken operational control of the Riviera. Greenbaum's downfall, like several men on this list, traced back to money that stopped reaching the syndicate figures who financed him. By 1958, according to FBI files and multiple historian accounts, Greenbaum's personal gambling debts and a worsening drinking and drug habit had led him to skim from the Riviera's countroom at a rate his Chicago backers considered unacceptable. On December 3, 1958, Greenbaum and his wife, Bess, were found dead in their Phoenix, Arizona home, their throats cut in a manner investigators immediately recognized as a syndicate-style execution. No one was ever charged. The Phoenix Police Department's investigation, later referenced in federal organized crime hearings, concluded the killing bore the hallmarks of a syndicate hit ordered out of Chicago. Greenbaum had run 2 of the Strip's most important properties for over a decade. He lost control of both in the same night he lost his life. Number 5. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. Siegel was sent west by the Luciano Lansky Syndicate in the late 1930s to oversee California and Nevada rackets, and by 1945 he had taken over an unfinished casino project on Highway 91 outside Las Vegas, renaming it the Flamingo and channeling syndicate financing into what became the first fully realized casino resort on the Strip. Construction costs ran far beyond the original plan, from a reported budget near $1.5 million to a final cost historians place above $6 million, and the Flamingo's disastrous opening on December 26, 1946, lost money in its first weeks before the property temporarily closed to finish construction. According to Nicholas Pileggi and multiple FBI files on the syndicate's Nevada investments, Siegel's partners, including Meyer Lansky, came to suspect that Siegel and his companion, Virginia Hill, were skimming construction funds into a Swiss account rather than simply mismanaging the build. On June 20, 1947, Siegel was shot to death through the window of Virginia Hill's Beverly Hills home while he sat reading a newspaper. The murder was never solved, and no one was ever charged. Within hours of the shooting, according to Denton and Morris, syndicate associates walked into the Flamingo and took over its operation without incident, as though the transition had been arranged well in advance. Siegel had controlled the Flamingo for barely over a year. He lost it, and his life, inside the same 20 minutes. Number 4. Johnny Rosselli. Rosselli served for 3 decades as the Chicago outfit's man on the West Coast, the figure who moved between Hollywood, Las Vegas, and the outfit's Chicago leadership, and who is documented in FBI files as the outfit's primary liaison overseeing its Las Vegas casino interests through the 1950s and 1960s. Rosselli's first major federal exposure came out of Hollywood rather than Las Vegas, when prosecutors convicted him in 1944 for his role in an extortion scheme run against the major film studios. He served 3 years. Rosselli had also entered the United States illegally as a young man and spent much of his adult life under the threat of federal deportation proceedings, a legal vulnerability that ran alongside his casino work for decades. His second conviction followed in 1968, when a federal jury found him guilty in the Friars Club case, a card-cheating scheme run out of the Beverly Hills Friars Club that defrauded wealthy members, including entertainment executives, out of an estimated $400,000. Rosselli served roughly 2 years on that sentence. His final exposure came from a direction the outfit never anticipated. In 1975, the Senate's Church Committee investigating Central Intelligence Agency covert operations, called Rosselli to testify about his documented role helping the CIA recruit organized crime figures for plots to assassinate Cuba's Fidel Castro in the early 1960s, an operation the committee's own 1975 report later confirmed. Rosselli testified before the committee twice. On August 9, 1976, his dismembered body was found stuffed inside a weighted oil drum floating in waters off the Florida coast. Federal investigators and historians, including Pileggi, concluded the outfit ordered the killing to stop Rosselli from telling the church committee anything further. He had overseen the outfit's Las Vegas interests for the better part of 3 decades. He lost them, in the end, to the one committee room the outfit could not intimidate. Number 3. Anthony Tony the Ant Spilotro. In 1971, the Chicago outfit sent Spilotro to Las Vegas to oversee its street-level interests and protect its casino skimming operation from local and federal interference. Spilotro also built and ran an off-books burglary crew, known in FBI files as the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang, for its practice of drilling through walls to bypass alarm systems. And in 1979, Nevada gaming regulators formally barred him from every casino in the state by placing him in the state's official list of excluded persons, the so-called Black Book, based on his documented organized crime record. According to Pileggi's casino and federal court filings, Spilotro's rising visibility and his growing local criminal exposure, including a burglary and jewelry fencing indictment, and a jury tampering scandal that led a federal judge to declare a mistrial, made him a liability the outfit's Chicago leadership could no longer absorb. In June 1986, Spilotro and his brother Michael were summoned to a house in Bensonville, Illinois, for what they were told was a promotion meeting. According to FBI files and later court testimony from outfit associates who cooperated with federal prosecutors, both brothers were beaten to death inside that house. Their bodies were found on June 23, 1986, buried in a shallow grave in an Indiana cornfield. Spilotro had run the outfit's Las Vegas street operation for 15 years. He lost it, and his life, to the same organization that had sent him there. His story, and Rosenthal's, form the documented basis for Nicholas Pileggi's Casino and the 1995 film built from it, in which Spilotro's role was portrayed under the name Nicky Santoro. Number 2. Frank Lefty Rosenthal. Rosenthal was never a made member of any Italian-American crime family. He built his early reputation as a professional sports handicapper before the Chicago outfit installed him, beginning in 1974, as the de facto operator of the Stardust, the Fremont, and the Hacienda. Rosenthal ran day-to-day operations at all 3 properties without ever holding an official Nevada gaming license, since state regulators repeatedly denied his license applications on the basis of his documented organized crime associations. According to Denton and Morris, Rosenthal's Stardust operation became the center of the outfit's Las Vegas skimming network. Cash pulled from the casino count room before it was ever recorded as taxable revenue, then routed back to organized crime figures in Chicago, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Cleveland. On October 4, 1982, a car bomb planted beneath the driver's seat of Rosenthal's Cadillac detonated in a Las Vegas restaurant parking lot. Rosenthal survived only because a steel plate installed under the seat, a standard precaution for men in his position, absorbed most of the blast. No one was ever charged. In 1988, after years of legal challenges, the Nevada Gaming Control Board's Black Book exclusion of Rosenthal was upheld, permanently barring him from any Nevada casino property for life. Rosenthal left Nevada for Florida, and then California, and never operated a casino again. He died in Boca Raton, Florida, in 2008, of a heart attack, at age 78. He had run 3 of the Strip's largest casinos for the better part of a decade. He lost them to a car bomb he survived, and a regulator's stamp he could not overturn. Rosenthal's Stardust years are the same documented history Pileggi and director Martin Scorsese adapted into Casino, where Rosenthal's role was portrayed under the name Sam Ace Rothstein. Number 1. Salvatore Sam Giancana. Giancana rose to boss of the Chicago outfit in 1957, and under his leadership, the outfit treated Las Vegas not as a single property to be managed, but as a network. The Stardust, the Fremont, the Riviera, and other strip and downtown casinos, each skimmed through operators the outfit installed and controlled, including Rosselli, Greenbaum, and later Rosenthal. According to FBI files and Denton and Morris's account, Giancana treated the Nevada skim as the outfit's single largest source of untaxed cash for the better part of a decade, personally deciding which capo answered for which property. FBI agents ran years of electronic surveillance on Giancana's Chicago headquarters, and the declassified transcripts of those recordings, released long after his death, document him discussing Las Vegas proceeds in his own words. Giancana's downfall did not come from a Las Vegas prosecution. It came from Washington. Beginning in the early 1960s, federal investigators documented Giancana's parallel involvement in a Central Intelligence Agency operation to assassinate Cuban leader Fidel Castro, an operation run through his outfit associate Johnny Rosselli, and later confirmed in the Senate Church Committee's 1975 report on CIA covert activities. In 1965, a federal grand jury investigating the Chicago outfit granted Giancana immunity and ordered him to testify. Giancana refused. A federal judge held him in contempt and jailed him for a full year until the grand jury's term expired in 1966. On his release, with federal and IRS scrutiny at its peak, Giancana left the country, living for the better part of 8 years in Mexico, while outfit lieutenants ran the Las Vegas network without him. Mexican authorities deported Giancana back to the United States in 1974 at the federal government's request. Within a year, the Church Committee issued a subpoena for Giancana to testify publicly about his role in the CIA mafia plots against Castro, testimony that would have been the first public accounting, under oath, of exactly how deep the outfit's relationship with American intelligence had run. Giancana never gave that testimony. On the night of June 19, 1975, in the basement kitchen of his home in Oak Park, Illinois, while frying sausage and peppers for himself, Giancana was shot in the back of the head and, according to the Cook County Medical Examiner's report, 6 additional times through the mouth and chin. There was no sign of forced entry. Investigators concluded at the time, and historians including Denton and Morris have concurred since, that Giancana let his killer into the house himself, which meant the killer was someone Giancana trusted. The murder was never solved. Giancana had directed the outfit's entire Las Vegas network from the top for the better part of 2 decades, through lieutenants who answered only to him. He lost that network in the span of 1 Senate subpoena and 1 quiet knock at his own kitchen door, 4 days before he was scheduled to tell Washington everything he knew. 7 men, 3 decades. Not one of them kept what he built. Dalitz sold before the law caught up with him. Greenbaum and Siegel were killed over money that never made it back to Chicago. Rosselli and Spilotro were killed by the same organization that had sent them west in the first place. Rosenthal survived a car bomb, only to lose everything to a state regulator's stamp. And Giancana, who directed all of it from Chicago, lost his life 4 days before he could tell a Senate committee what he knew. It bears stating plainly that the organized crime figures named in this account, Giancana, Spilotro, Rosselli, and the outfit leadership behind them, represented a small criminal minority within Italian-American history, not the community itself. The broader Italian-American community built American cities, served in 2 world wars, founded major American industries, and has nothing to do with the conduct documented tonight. Las Vegas today is owned by publicly traded gaming corporations, licensed and audited by the same Nevada Gaming Control Board that once fought Frank Rosenthal for a decade. That transition away from mob ownership is its own documented story, and this channel will return to it. Organized crime built its empire in the dark. Federal prosecutors and historians spent decades dragging it into the light. The 5 family files exists to document what they found, not to glorify it, not to bury it, but to remember it. Sources for everything covered tonight are in the description. This has been The 5 Family Files. Good night from the archive.